So this is Baruch here in my backyard at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. So one thing that I wanted to mention that I don't is that the really purpose in my mind of the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, I don't know whether a lot of people will ever be listening to shiurim that are so deep and, in my opinion, deep than the average person for the average person, but is to make it known, is to make everybody realize that the Zohar is something beautiful, clean, and pristine, and especially in an age where we live in now, where maybe 20%, if you want to be generous, 15 to 25% of Jews live within the Shabbos world, or connected in some way to Shabbos. Like I was in Baltimore once, and people said that in Baltimore you have 20,000 Jews, 10,000 are all Orthodox. 10,000 of them keep Shabbos. So it is that people could be away from Torah, but nonetheless be looking at it. But then you have, what about everybody else? People that don't know Torah, don't even know what it is, don't know what these words are. What is the Sifra Tzniuta? What is the Zohar? What's inside of the Zohar? So this is what the Tikkun Elevator Kollel wants to do. We want to promote just knowledge, that people should have a background, that people should have some idea of what these words are, and that they are holy, kosher, and kadosh. Let's look around a little bit and bring this thing around. I'm really not sure how to do it, but we'll turn it that way, and then I'll turn it this way. And we're coming to the Zohar. Now today is the third day of the week of Parshas Vayikra. Today is Tiferet. I heard somewhere that Tiferet is similar to the concept of purple. Not because, we understand that the Zohar says that Tiferet is green, and that Chesed is white, and that Gevurah is red, and that's the mix of the colors. But the mixture, actually, the concept of purple is a concept that it's a mixture. It's beautiful in its richness, and it has a lot in it. That is Tiferet. That's the day that we're at night today. Today is the third day of the week. So let's go over here. We're in this Zohar now. I've been looking through this Zohar, and I am busy sometimes, and I can't spend the time that I need in order to be able to find something good, something that I like, that I could get into. Over here in this Zohar, it's talking about a lot of very particular, specific kind of Torah. And I chose this place. So the place we're at right now is on page Kuf Yud. You could see it if you're watching the video. It's going to start right here. And like we do, we're going to read across the top first, and then we'll get into the matuk as much as possible. It says, Tanana Sarish Shemot is Kalalo Banafka Maha Yud. He said, let's take the letter Yud, the Yud of the Yud Ke Vav Ke, and I'm going to tell you how there are 10 names that are incorporated within this letter Yud. Now here you see the Yud spelled out, Yud Vav Dalet. So Yud, so now the Zohar says Yud Dihi Isirah the Asfon. It is the 10th of the letters. Now exactly what that means, we'll get a better definition from the Matok. V'huhu oil lon lahachun nahar kadisha kad is abra. And all of this Yud, everything that's in it, enters in oil loan to them, lahachun nahar, until that river, in other words, enter into that river, kadisha, the holy river, kad is abra, when it becomes impregnated, and it becomes impregnated. V'asar shemahum kulus dimin bechad. So all of the 10 names are all hidden inside of one letter. And it's all in Yud, the Yud. Yud Kolil Lon, Yud has everything in it. Yud Apik Lon, the Yud is the energy that causes them to be born. Who Av Kulam, he is the father of all of it. Av Avaham, he is the father of fathers. So let's go on. Minei Nafku. Now from that letter Yud, so he says there are 10 words that come out, but I don't know what the parenthesis is about. Then he says that the letter Yud has within it, if you spell it out, the letters Vav Daled, Remez L'Chasar B'Cheshbon. This is to teach you that in the count, in the concept of counting, there's another 10 besides the Yud itself. Asvan Yud Vav Daled. Now you have these letters Yud Vav Daled, called it Lon Vav Daled. So if you take the Yud and you spell it like that, you understand. And we had this concept, I don't know, somewhere yesterday, that the concept is saying it out loud. As you start to say the yud, it's no longer a little squiggle, and a lot of what this Zohar deals with is that particular squiggle, how it's made, and many different things. It's so-called, but it has within it these sounds of udalid, ud or yud, like that. And sounds, and look at the word he uses on it, and I think this is important to me. Asfon yud klilin lon vav dalid shlima de kula. Now that wasn't what I was looking at. This is what I was looking for. He says the letter vav and dalid that completes the letter yud, these two letters, remez l'asara b'cheshbon. It's a reference to the concept of count. Now, so what he's telling me here is that counting is more specific, it's more physical than just the letter itself, the yud, which is like an energy source. And then you start analyzing it. That's the concept of the vav daled, which is, of course, bina in other places, because they could be made into a hay. I think we've seen that before. So he says, Asfon yud kalilin lon vav daled. So if you take any yud, it has a vav daled in it too. That's how we pronounce it, shlima the kula, and it finishes it. It makes it together. Vav daled, a dakar v'nux. Now we've seen this other places too. The letter vav refers to zer anpin, and the daled, it refers to malchus. So how do we get to malchus? Yud, K, vav. That's 3 letters, and K, 4, is the 4th letter. It refers to the daled. The daled also, which is a metaphor in a lot of places, where they say the daled really is a lashon dalus, or poverty, or emptiness, which is a concept that the Kabbalah sees as the concept of the female. So he says it could be vav daled, the kad dacha v'nuk, and then also du karinin lon trin. But also the word du, of course, in Latin means two. Karinin lon train. So we see that when it's in a different form, that is, the daled comes first, then we call them two. Valda adam du partsufa ispere. So on this we have the adam, du, again, dos, like in Spanish, is this two partsufim, 2 systems of light. Ispere are created in the man. The inin partsufim dakar v'nuk, they are the partsufim of the male and the female aspect. The nukva chava kagam to the la'ela, and the nukva is like, well, what we see up above. Now, what that meant, I don't know. We got a matuk, we'll try to figure it out. Now let's take the vav daled, which is the milui of the letter yud. Me'ela the sata, du mitata la'ela. So if you take the letters in this order, the order is that vav comes first and then the daled, just like yud, vav, daled. Me'ela the tata. So we say this is in the normal sequence. The sequence is when things fall from up above, down below. That's the vav comes first because it represents their anpin, and the daled comes second, which is referred to the malchus. But on the other hand, du mitata la'ela, there's another formation of these where the daled, which is malchus, comes first. And we have seen this in the Zohar, if not here, but maybe in the Tiferet Tziyut, I'm not sure. But he said, the du mitata la'ela, that's where you start counting from the bottom, which is malchus. So you start with malchus, and then you go upwards to zer anpin. V'kula chad mila. Now all of this idea of whether it's called ud, which is vav daled, or it's called du, which we understand is the word for two. So he says, v'kulu chad mila. Yud gimel mechilin talyin base. So he says that if you come to this place where you have the yud and the vav and the daled, he says what comes out is that the 13 midas harachamim from Eric Anpin hang down to that place. Valda yud kol vav daled kama de itmar, and this is the reason why the yud has within it the vav and the daled. Now this had been explained previously. So the Zohar says, "V'tol chaz, you come and see asara shemalhum inan the kabel eser asvon." So he says the 10 names that we're talking about, and we're trying to get to what are the 10 names. They include within them 10 letters. Over Sifra, the Rav Hamnuna Saba. Now in the book of Rav Hamnuna Saba, understand that Rav Hamnuna Saba is a spirit. That's where they're in touch. So Rav Hamnuna Saba says Tamanya Inam. There are 8 of them, not 10. Asrin Dargin the Kabul Trin Rikiyim, and there are 2 different levels because there are 2 different heavens. Umeshtanyan Shemachon, then their names change. Asara V'Tisha Usmanya Ushvi. So then there is a possibility. There could be 10, there could be 9, there could be 8, or maybe even 7. Now this is a kind of a little mysterious piece of Zohar. So let's come over here and let's read the Matuk Midrash and see if the Matuk will help us to be able to understand this. Let me see how this will work out on the page. Looks okay so far. So let's go over here and let's look at the Matuk Midrash. And the Matuk says, the Basa Nafkin Trin Bara, wrong place. Sorry, it's down here. Tanan, we learn like this. Asara Shema is Kalalo V'Nafko Mehayud. There are 10 different names that are incorporated, and they come out from the letter Yud. Now, previous to this, as I said before, the Zohar has been working over the letter Yud, has been working over all the letters to see how they're connected. So now we're at this place. So he said, "Mi zu shehi sod Abba." So he said, "V'yatze mi Yud." So it comes out. Everything comes out for Yud. Zu shehi sod Abba, because the Yud is the secret of Chochmah, which is another word for Abba. V'hema eser spheres the Zer Anpin, and here what we're talking about is the 10 spheres of Zer Anpin. A question how you count them. The normal counting is Keser, Chochmah, Bina, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. That's 10. So he said the Zah. V'omer Yud Di'ihu Yisar the Asvon. It's the 10th of the letters. What is Os Yud? Who Os series is the 10th letter. Min Ha-Aleph base. So in other words, if you start counting Aleph base, Yud Vav Dalet, so you'll Aleph base Gimel Dalet. Sorry. So he said whose series Min Ha-Aleph base. So this will be the 10th one as you're counting from the bottom. So therefore, since we're building as we're going up to this Yud, then incorporated in the Yud when you reach it are all the other 9 names, or he says within it are 10 names. So as kol ha'eses spheros, now we're taking the 10 spheres of Zer Anpin. Hiknis v'nasan Abba b'sof ha'yichud l'soch ha'nahra kodesh, into the holy river. Shehi ima keshenis Avra mechem, when she becomes impregnated with it. Now let's just read back here so we don't get too confused. There was a little place of confusion, could be. He says, because Eser has spheros the Zer Anpin. Now let's understand, Zer Anpin doesn't exist in the world that we're talking about, because Abba, we're in the world of Abba. He's the letter Yud. Zer Anpin is the letter Vav. So he's telling us that in the letter Yud is also contained the Mochin, use that word, for Zer Anpin. So he says, and then we can understand it. So all of them enter into that river. As called the Eses spheres the Zer Anpin, Hiknis v'Nasan Abba. So Abba places them inside of the Besoda Yichud when he makes a Yichud with Ima. L'socha Nahar HaKodesh, into this holy river. Shehi Ima. This is Ima. And what happens then? Kishanis Avra Mehem, she becomes impregnated from Zer Anpin and the Nukva, which are inside of him now, inside of her. Then, V'asara Shemahum Kulu Stimin Bechad. Called Asara Shema Stumim B'Yachad Be'ima. So now we see that everything that came from Abba into Ima are now 10 different lights that are closed up inside. And he says not lights, he says Shemos, names. They're all closed up inside of Ima. V'kuhu stimim b'yud, and all of them are closed in the yud. V'kulam stumim b'yud b'sod hatipa. So imagine that the yud is a drop. And inside of that drop, because we say over and over again that the smallness, there is tremendous power in smallness. And so that when just this little drop of the yud, which could be in fact a dot, is all the power that is going to be manifest into our world. So he says, Ki Yud Kol Alone Os Yud the Abba Kol Olasam. So he says that in the Yud itself, he incorporates everything else. Yud Apiklon. Then the Yud itself is the energy that causes the Vav and the Dalet that we're talking about, the Yud Vav Dalet, to be born out. V'achakach Abba Hodse Osam, he causes them to go up, V'nasna Besod HaYichud Le'ima, and he puts them into Ima through the secret of their combining into oneness. Who Av Lakula, he becomes the father of all of us. That he's the Av, the Partsufim, call a Partsufim of Atzilus. Av La'achvahan, Shem Avos, the Partsufim Bria, which these are all, remember, understand that Atzilus and the way that Atzilus works is a template for all of the other worlds. Maybe different names applied in order to understand it, but basically, in every world there's a Kesser all the way through Malchus. And the relationships between each one of them is that there are Partsufim in each one of the Spheros. So this is a template. So he says, who Av L'Kol Partsufi Atzilus, this is the father, the template for all of the Partsufim Atzilus. Av La'avahan, he's the father of father, Shehem Avos the Partsufi Bria, Shehem Avos the Partsufi Yetzira, V'Hasiyah. So understand that one world develops out from the next. What they have in common is they're no longer Atzilus, in Atzilus, which means they're not, Atzilus means close to or right next to. So let's go over here, and I guess we're still down at the bottom. So let me see if I got us here. Minei Nafko Vav Dal. So from this Yud, we understand that hidden inside of it is these two letters. Me'os Yud Peshuta Yatsa Vav Dal. From that simple Yud comes out the letter Vav Dal, Shehem Amilui Shalom, which are the Milui of the letter Yud. Remez the Rasara B'Cheshbon. So this is what I read before, and I pointed it out, that this is a remez to the fact that that you can make a count on it. Counting is Lashon Malchus. So it's a Lashon of a conclusion, or a some kind of a siyum where everything is combined. Remez Shehem Mispar Asara B'Cheshbon. You could count it out like this. Ki Vav Dalad Gematria is Yud. So the Vav Dalad is a Gematria of Yud, and it's 10. So we have a 10 within a 10. So for Amma Asbon Yud Kalil Lon Vav Dalad. So just a simple letter Yud. It has within it, implied through sound and the vibrations of sound, the letters of Vav and Dalad, Shlima the Kula. Leave Sheba Oz Yud, because in the Los Yud, when we write it out like this and understand its sounds as well as its form, Malaya Kalula Vav Dav. And when it's filled out, it has a Vav and Dalad in it. V'chein ki shleimus hakol. So therefore, this Yud becomes the completion of everything. Ki yatsa b'mena Vav Dalad, because the Vav Dalad comes out from the Yud. Dakar v'nuk, because the concept is that the Vav represents Zer Anpen, and the Dalad represents the Nukva. So we see that even way back in Abba, who's the father of fathers, we already see that the Vav and the Dalad are there. That's what he wants to say. So now the Zohar goes over this way a little bit. And maybe this is to teach us that never sit still and never think that, in the Zohar, that it's going to become square and you're going to be able to see every possible thing. That's hardly true. Because as much as we have the Yud, then it's spelled Vav Dalad, but you can find another way to make it go Yud and then Dalad Vav. So how does that work? And so in other words, that's do. Do, Korean, and lone train, because we understand in Latin, as we said before, do means two. Do, Korean, osam, Korean, osam. So then you could also call it, instead of Yud Vav Dalad, you could make it into a Yud and a do. So osam shepirusho shnayim, which means two. Ba'alda adam du partsufim is beri. So now we understand that in this sentence we can switch around and look more deeply at this Vav Dalad. We've now said comes from Abba, goes into Ima. Balkain Adam B'Chava. So let's go back to the original man. He was built in two forms, male and female. So he said, V'alkain Adam B'Chava Nivru Beitz Partsufim. So they were created as two systems, Devukim Yachad, which are stuck together. Then after that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu surgically removed, as it was, to say the Nukva, and she became a separate entity. And there's a result of that HaKadosh Baruch Hu divided them. V'inam Partsufim Dachar v'Nukva. So these are now the Partsufim of Zer Anpin and his Nukva, Havakagamda the La'ela, and they're like what we saw up above. Now what is that? The Elah HaPartsuf Zachav v'Nekeba Shal Adam V'Chava. So let's looking at the Partsufim of Abba v'Chava. They were similar to Zohar and Nukab above. In the spiritual world, they were opposites. Because originally they were davek, their backs to each other. And then after that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed them, separated them. so that they shared a back. Now the nukva becomes built up to a point, and we see this in lots of different places. She becomes built up to a point where she's independent. She's by herself. A modern woman. So you can count them. If you go from the top to the bottom, it's Vav Dalet. Shel Milu Yud Vav Dalet. Hey Milamala Lamata. That's calling from the top to the bottom. Zun Behiyosim Ba'Abba. Because Zun, when they're inside of Abba, Sham Haim Besod Dechura Al Nukva, then you see that the Kura, the male comes first. Vav Kodemis Ladalet. So we see the Vav there comes before the Dalet. Du mitamin la'elo. So then you have the other way, though. You could spell it instead of Vav Dalet, you could spell it du, like this, du. Mitata la'elo. That's counting from the bottom to the top. You start with Malchus, you go upwards. So, Haim milamata lamala. Kizun, now here's a fact. Bihiyose be'ima, shehi sod hey rishon to Shem Avaya. Okay, so ima is like a house. So now you have this Dalet, this Yud has entered in, become one with her. And as a result of that, it's either hey rishoma the shem avaya, sham heim besod nukva al dechura, because in there the nukva that is in bina, in the first hey, there you see that the nukva comes first. That is, it's du. Daled kodemis levav. There the daled is before the vav. V'kula chad mila, but it's all really one idea. V'chakol hu davar echad. Ki shtei bechidus choya bezun, because there are two different aspects in zun. So one is Yud Gimel Mechilin Talyan Bey, 13 attributes of mercy that come from Erik Anpin. Yud Gimel Midas Arachmim Shel Tikuni Didikna de Erik Anpin, which come from the beard of Erik Anpin. Tuluyas Ba'os Yud Peshuta, they're hanging on that Yud. Now one of the things, and let's make a real quick little drawing, is that if we imagine that Erik Anpin, who's the center of Atzilus, that Erik Anpin, he has a beard, let's say he has a beard, which is a beard full of channels of light, goes down, let's say this is his neck area, okay? And in this place, we find the Partsufim surrounding him, so to speak, as that was possible, of Abba ve'ima. They surround Zer Anpin, they surround Erik Anpin. This is Abba, and this is Ima. Okay, they surround Zera Erik Anpin. This is Erich. You could say it a bunch of times. And that's where they're at. They're from his beard going downwards. Now let's see if I could get. So Gimel, let's see, he says, so he Yud Gimel Midas Arachim Mishal Tikuni Dedigna Erik Anpin. Tuluyas Bos Os Yud Peshuta. They come down and they hang down from the letter Yud. The Fishi Yesh Bo Gimel Kutsin, because the letter Yud, he says, has three different points. There's a point at the very top, there's a point at the very bottom, and early in the Zohar he had said that there's a point in the middle. And they could combine into one Yud. So there's 3 points, and you take that, a Milui Heim Vav Dal, then you take the Milui that comes out of the 3 points, and he says there Vav Dalad Shugamatria Aser, which is Vav and Dalad is Gematria of Aser. Harabiyachad Heim Yud Gimel. Take your time and review this. It's a little bit of thought. But it's on the Lomar Edel Hayud Gimel Midos. So what do I want to say like this? These 13 midas of Rachamim, Hamashpios Ba'Abba. This is really what the metaphor wants to say. It says that these Abba surrounds them. As a result of that, they pour into Abba. Ki Hadikta de Erik Anpin Chofef Alav, because the beard of Erik Anpin surrounds Abba Ve'ima. They're not on the outside of the beard. Maybe my drawing gave us that idea, but they're located there. The beard actually, he's saying, surrounds them. So the beard comes out like this, it goes down like that. That's the beard of Erik Anpin. It covers over Abba Ve'ima. Now let's finish up now, and it says. So it's Al Kain Yud Malaya Kalulas Vav Dalet Kamosh Amarno. So therefore we understand that the Yud has the Vav and the Dalet. In Abba, it's in the form of Vav on Dalet. In Ima, it switches around. I think we may have learned this somewhere else before, or maybe I did. I don't know. Who knows what? But at any rate, is the Dalet there becomes on top of the Vav. Kedei l'ramas ala yud gimel midas arachamim. So you see that you take the 10 spheros, and you take the 3 points of the yud, and now you have the idea that these midos are surrounding Abba Ve'ima. They have a tremendous impact on it. The whole now we've explained this. So we talked about this before, he says, and that's our sod for this day of Tiferet, which is the 3rd day of the week of Parshat Vayikra.